Let's bring in Richard Fisher, former Dallas Fed president. Richard, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Richard, you've been in that chair before in front of the Senate Banking Committee. How did you think that Kevin Warsh did, facing questions about Fed independence, those sock puppet comments, and also his own comments about kind of reorganizing how the Fed does its business?
I thought he did a good job, actually. We saw his great personality there, which is going to be important to win over the rest of the committee. As he pointed out, it takes 12 voters and 19 people total on a committee to win over. I thought he downplayed expectations of ability to move quickly. By the way, I voted against QE3. I argued against QE2 when I didn't have the vote, and I argued that QE1, as he argued, would only be a short while to get out of that crisis. So, and both of us agree that the dot plot is an imperfect exercise. So I think he did a good job. The Democrats obviously are concerned about whether or not he made a pledge to the president or not. He seemed to handle that well. And the Republicans seem to be enthusiastic, even Senator Tillis. And Senator Tillis, of course, is going to hold until they get this business of Powell cleared up. It was good. It was a good year.
I think enthusiastic is putting it lightly. Some people are just saying, listen, you're going to be the Fed chair, and basically this is a formality. So enthusiasm plus, let's just put it right there. I don't know how well you know Kevin Warsh.
Very well.
But there were a lot of questions about the president's ability to coerce him, or if he's already in the president's pocket and he's been put there or potentially put there to cut rates. The president not doing me any favors on CNBC earlier today, basically saying he expects there to be rate cuts right away. What do you make of that and the people that have questions about that?
Well, I think I can understand their questions. The president's a powerful individual. But Kevin's only 56 years old. He's got a long way to go. And he knows about all the precedents that took place, particularly McChesney Martin. When Truman made him chairman of the Fed, he said that he would cut interest rates. When he got there, he didn't. And Truman used a Trumpism by describing him as a traitor to the United States. By the way, McChesney Martin was the longest serving Fed chairman in history. And Kevin has a long way ahead of him. He could serve at his age, I said 56, 46, for a very long time. So I think he's going to be worried about his historic legacy. And he has to look through the Trump administration and look beyond that, which he talks a great deal about. And that's going to be guiding him as he goes through time.
All right. So, Richard, you mentioned that you and Kevin Warsh are friends. You seem to see eye to eye with him on a couple of things. The dot plot's one of those things. We had a guest on earlier, Stephanie Link, who believes that he can go in there and kind of corral the members. If the data doesn't support cuts, is Kevin Warsh somebody that can convince the other members that, hey, we do need to cut for the sake of middle income or lower income Americans, even if inflation remains higher and even if we don't see weakness in the labor market?
No, I don't think it works that way. He's got to convince the table. And again, there are 19 people at that table, 12 of whom have votes. He's going to have to deal, for example, with John Williams at the New York Fed, who's a powerful individual. And he's not a dictator. He's chairman of the FOMC if he is confirmed as chairman of the Fed and as the chairman of the FOMC. And I think he's going to have to use his considerable personal skills to win them over. After all, you've heard the criticism he's made of them in the past. There's some ill feelings about that. They're a little strong. And I think he can overcome that using his personality, but it will take time. And I think he has that potential. I just hope they're able to discard this silly business about Mr. Powell, who I hold in high regard. It is time for some change. And Kevin can get it done, but it'll take time to do it. That's my point.